Some scenes really do seem to paint themselves, and this one was pretty close to one of those classics. It had lovely light, contrast, and I do love that big dark sky, but with the weather changing so fast, I thought, you know what, I'll leave this one for the studio. Let's see how I go. One of the things I did enjoy with this scene was the perspective. Not so much, it's pretty well sort of front on, but this shape here, it's amazing how little we can sometimes need, but for how much we can get from it. So I'm just getting in some of these very simple basic shapes. The one thing I have learnt with oil painting is, in this first stage, no matter how hard I've tried, I can never get the values dark enough. So I've given up trying. So what I do more now is close enough is good enough, especially on the first go. Because every bit that I've put down, if I've got it half an inch or 10 centimetres, 12 centimetres, millimetres, in the wrong spot, I can wipe it out and start again. Not that you want to do that too often anyway. But that's the beauty of the first stage. Keep it thin so that if I am out, or I normally always sort of think to myself, I'm going to be out, no doubt about it. So don't put the paint on too thick, or you're going to make it hard for yourself or myself later. So thick enough that it kind of covers the board, even though my sort of theory is that I'm probably going to see a little bit of the board underneath anyway. So just keep it nice and movable, flexible, and fairly thin. That's why the old saying, start thin, finish fat, is the perfect thought process when it comes to this first stage. And this is a very important stage to really try and making sure that we're getting those shapes really working. So there was only a few little changes that I made to the original scene, and one was the turning the chimney into a brick chimney, because I kind of felt that there was already quite a bit of the off-white. And boy, just having this value mixed, it can look really dramatic. It looks like I'm going to put a mountain in behind it, but that sky was just a little gift from the art gods. Just have that lovely dark, because that was only going to push and really sort of propel the painting or the building towards the viewer. So now we can see the full effect. That's why we always tend to go in really powerful and then break things down. But I'd always prefer to go in a little too strong and not underdo it, because there's always a tendency when we underdo it, the finished painting normally will be a little diluted when we bring in some of the refinements. When you can see that brush mark there, that's pretty well straight off the brush, possibly a little bit too much titanium white in that, but it's normally only going to become a slightly more reduced in its power and strength because of the reworking and working over it, whether I'm just going to put a little bit of foliage in front of it. I can start to see a few little bits of sort of junk in the paint, so that was something that I had to sort of clean up later. Normally if you do get a little bit of grass or something, or a little bit of dry paint, you can try and get it out then and there, or wait till you finish, because a lot of times it's either a bigger problem than we thought or not as big. So now just a few little windows I've just added that nice little bit of red onto the top of the signal tower. And doing windows are a interesting sort of part of painting, because we can we can sort of really easily overdo them. But I always try to make sure that they're more rectangular than square, because there's kind of nothing worse than having any shape too equal. So that's where squares are probably our number one enemy when it comes to shapes. Circles, triangles, rectangles. Not sure if there's too many more basic shapes than that, but that's why we want to sort of keep all of our shapes as random as possible. This really is the fun part of a painting. It's where I'm really coming in, just doing sort of dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's, just doing the fine-tuning, the finessing. And that's why we want to really push the notion and the thought that we're looking at light and dark, warm and cold. So, and we can always just come in and correct things quite easily. That's why I think as a painter, one of the dangers is not getting back often enough. Because there's nothing like looking globally, where we always have to paint locally because we're up close to the painting. So you'll see when I move away, that's me stepping back. And at the start and at the finish is probably the most important times, is to really sort of make sure that we're doing it in those periods, those times. I was nearly not going to put the tower this is kind of the probably the more modern part of the whole building, which is a more 20th century communication device. And I have a feeling this is for ships, because there's the water, as you saw, just over the other side of the cliff of the signal tower. It possibly could be for other things, but yeah, that's what I think it is. So it looks like just need to bring in just some of those little subtle little bits of corrections. That's why I see myself as more of a direct impressionist. I really enjoyed painting this scene. It just had fantastic shapes to organise, to arrange. The light was sensational. It really was marvellous. I hope you enjoyed it. All the best.